So this is the interview that was done by the South African president, our stepfather, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. We have to listen to what he has to say. But on his UN General Assembly address, he spoke about the need for the removal of sanctions in Zimbabwe. This is what he had to say.
The sanctions that are also being applied against South Africa's neighbor, Zimbabwe, should also be lifted as they are imposing untold suffering on ordinary Zimbabweans, but also have a collateral negative impact on neighboring countries as well, such as my own country, South Africa.
That being said, you can see the president of South Africa continuously defending ZANU-PF and the current government. And, he's trading carefully, he's doing this diplomatic thing, the same way how Thabo Mbeki was doing, this diplomatic, there is no a direct confrontation approach of saying, oh, there are really problems, we need to look at that. And no, that is leaving all of us with no hope that SADC is going to do anything. Anyway, let's listen to Cyril Ramaphosa when he was being asked at the United Nations General Assembly by Shevin Bryan's piece, Credit Video to SABC. Let us get into it.
As South Africa does every year in a General Assembly speech for the lifting of sanctions in Cuba, which is not in Africa, to be clear, but also in Zimbabwe. I'll tell you what the US president wrote to Congress when they renewed the sanctions regime earlier this year. President Mnangagwa has not made necessary political and economic reforms that would warrant terminating the existing targeted sanctions program, citing continued repression and intimidation of citizens, absence of reforms on rule of law, democratic governance, and protection of human rights. They are also pointing to the SADC Observer Missions report that pointed to issues of credibility and process in terms of the election. Yet you, Mr. President, were at the inauguration. You congratulated President Mnangagwa. How do you thread that needle given what SADC has said and what the United States is saying?
Well, let's get it right. What was said by a representative of the Observer Mission is still got to be discussed in SADC because it's not a final report. And if one looks at that report, it actually says there were challenges with regard to a number of things that have to do with elections. And many countries around the world have such challenges. The United States is, a prime example with regard to their last election. So there are challenges, and they have said in the report, as I read it, that certain things need to be improved. They have not declared the election as invalid, unfree, and unfair. They have highlighted certain challenges.
Problems with transparency, independence, fairness, and credibility of all stages of the electoral process. That's what the report says.
Well, indeed. And those are challenges that need to be addressed.
Challenges that would be unacceptable in the South African context.
Well, where there's a lack of transparency, they need to come up with.
That is a very valid point. If this was going to happen in South Africa, I don't see this quiet diplomacy or this, reserved approach of things would be taken by the South African political players, or even by the constitutional courts or whatever, or they wouldn't, So I really think that this trading carefully, this, trading on nuances and, trying to play a diplomatic card. I mean, it's very, very frustrating. But let's continue listening to him.
The details. And I would say, yes, let the details be put forward so that we can deal with them. So we are waiting to receive that report at the SADC level so that we can deal with it. Because if anything, it was an interim report. So once the report is put to the SADC body, we will then debate it, and we will also hear representations from Zimbabwe, as well as from the Observer Mission as well.
You know what this gives me? It gives me these vibes of, if you recall, in 2008, just after Mugabe declared himself a winner in the runoff, that he was a lone player, He was asked on CNN, and this is what he had to say, that there's always challenges in any political, in any elections. Let's listen to what Mugabe said in 2000.
And yet, this election was so heavily disputed that you have to go into a power sharing
elections
I guess I want to know why to hang on for so long.
Elections don't go all that smoothly all the time. In many countries, that's the situation. Look at what happens elsewhere. They didn't go smoothly here during the first term, before the first term of office of President Bush.
Last
know what happened in Florida. The 400,000 votes, where did they go? They were stolen by Mr. Bush, and you people said nothing about it.
Well, it was very heavily covered, and there's a dispute about the word stolen.
So having that backdrop and this, stance whereby political players like CYRIL Ramaphosa, for example, one might say you are doing this quiet diplomacy. One, you know how it's going to affect South Africa, because it's going to affect South Africa. The people of Zimbabwe are going to move into South Africa. That is a given. And you see, the reason why people from Zimbabwe find it favorable to come to South Africa. I was watching Loiso Bala, who is in Bulawayo, and they are going there with Mhlobo Wenene. And the reason why Zimbabweans find South Africa to be favorable, they are Ndebeles in South Africa. There are Xhosas in South Africa. There are Sotus in South Africa. There are Tswanas in South Africa. There are Vendas in South Africa. There are these same tribes that you find in South Africa. You still find them in Zimbabwe. That's why you find that it is very easy for someone who is in Zimbabwe, especially in these parts of Matabeleland, this down part of the country, they can find themselves in South Africa. Why? Because the economy is hard for them to live. If somebody finishes school, the next thing is, what am I going to do? Where am I going to get employment? Can I go to university? Do I have the money? And all of that. So this is because of this quiet diplomacy. Not only that, why do these people have quiet diplomacy? If you recall, in 2020, the ANC delegation went to Zimbabwe, and they failed to yield any good result when they said that there were human rights violations that were there. They left South Africa very animated, and everyone was excited that they were going to tackle the issue when Hope Washington and Jacob Mnangagwa was arrested. And they went there and said, we want to solve the issue of human rights violations. And when they went there, it looked like some people, when they got there at the ZANU-PF headquarters, those guys, they pulled up their nudes and said, you see, you've got your nudes here. What are you going to talk about here? Leave us alone. And they changed their statement completely. Why do they do that? It's because a lot of South African companies have so many businesses in Zimbabwe. One in particular is Impala Platinum. Impala Platinum is mining a lot of platinum, and they are collecting raw platinum straight to South Africa, unprocessed. So, and for your own information, one of CYRIL Ramaphosa's associates sits on that board. And the president, CYRIL Ramaphosa, has got so much interest in Zimbabwe. Is that a bad thing? It's a good thing. But it is in that backdrop that they do not push, like what Ian Kama was doing, to say, look, this is wrong. Let us fix this. Like what Lev Mwanasa was doing. This is wrong. Let us fix this. So I really think that, in all honesty, we need, the South Africa needs to take a stance, because the same ANC, when they come here, they say, you are coming into our country illegally. How do you expect someone to come to South Africa legally when they don't have money? When they don't have money to get their passport, to get their papers in order, and they don't have qualification, they are coming here to look for something that they can do in order to fend for themselves, or not to turn into drug and alcoholism. So they will just find maybe $100 or $200. They call their cousin who is here in South Africa. Maybe they've regularized their stay. They come. So it's because of this quiet diplomacy. But I want to hear from you. What do you make of Cyril Ramaphosa's statements? And what do you make of the influx and the subject of foreigners and the tightening of the borders by the Ministry of Home Affairs and the issue of saying we've got illegal immigrants and most of them, they are Zimbabweans. Yes, of course, they are Zimbabweans, but their president is doing this and they are doing quiet diplomacy. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you on the next video.